Hi, this is Laura Smits. Welcome to our League of Women Voters of Connecticut lunch about voting and absentee balloting. I'm the Voter Service Chair for the State Connecticut League. I'm also a member of the Norwalk League, as well as a 20-year member of the League of Women Voters and a former registrar of voters. So hopefully we can get your questions answered today about the absentee ballot process, about the voting process, and ensure you that every vote in Connecticut counts. And we're very, very, very excited that you're going to vote and make this happen this year for all of us, for the primary as well as the November election. So we're going to go through the process. So if there are any questions, I said put them into the Facebook Live event comment section, and we'll see if we can answer as many as possible. I'm going to start. I have a PowerPoint presentation that will show you the beginning to end of the absentee ballot process. And in Connecticut, that starts with the application. And that's one of the things there is some confusion. Before I go into that, there is some confusion that we do not get ballots mailed directly to you in Connecticut. You have to put an application in first, and the application must be approved by the town clerk where you live, making sure that you are a legitimate active voter. So this is what our application looks like. And if you notice at the top, there is a section for a number. That number is given to your absentee ballot application once everything has been gone through and you're verified that you're a voter, it verifies who you are and everything's good. Then you will get a number for your application in that little box in the corner, so that when your absentee ballot is returned, your actual ballot is returned, they can match that number to your application. Now, the first part of the application, as you can see, it's pretty important. It's about your voter information. I would suggest that if you fill this out carefully, including your name, your date of birth, as well as a telephone number or an email address where you can be reached, so that if there is a problem with your application, they can contact you and correct it, hopefully, so it won't take less time to get your information, your absentee ballot, to you. And you'll notice for this is a new section. All of these other excuses that you have to have in Connecticut. One of the excuses right now is COVID-19. So that if you don't feel safe, you can fill out an absentee ballot and be very truthful about why you're getting one. Unfortunately, in Connecticut, we don't have no excuse absentee at this point. There's a lot of complications about that. We have to go and change our constitution, which we have tried and failed. We keep trying to get that so that we can have other options besides just excuse absentee, as well as in-person voting. So that's hopefully something down the road. But this year, for the primary and for the November election, you will be able to claim COVID-19 as an excuse to use an absentee ballot. And that's right there. The other important piece, besides your information being correct, is down here. You have to sign and date it. If they receive an application that is not signed and dated, you will not be getting an absentee ballot. So that's very important that it's signed. And if you had somebody help you fill it out, you have to make sure that person signs as well. If you have you can't read or whatever, there's ways that you can have someone help you. As long as they sign that and print their name, that is totally fine for the application. Once the application is received by the town clerk and everything's good, then you will get an absentee ballot packet, which will include 3 things: your ballot with instructions, and I would fill them out very carefully, because unlike when you're in the polling place and you make a mistake on your ballot, you can always get a new ballot. You cannot do that with an absentee ballot. It's just one shot. So that's why it's very important that you follow the instructions that come with your ballot packet correctly. And that's why we're going to go through all of this stuff right now. So the ballot itself looks like any other ballot. You've seen them in person. It's the same ballot. They're just folded up so that you can get them in the mail. Fill out your ovals completely. This is something that happens all the time. People just put a check mark or an X, and it's not going to be enough. You need to make sure you use a dark pen. Blue or black ink helps. You can use a pencil, but please bear down. We want to make sure that when you fill out your ballot, it can be read by the optical scanner. And this is the inner envelope. This is where your ballot, once it's completed, will go inside. You insert your ballot into the inner envelope and make sure that you sign it and date it. It must be signed and dated in this inner envelope. And you'll notice that up here, it has a little a B. So right after, you'll see why that B is important. Once you've filled out that inner envelope and you've signed it, you'll be putting it in envelope C, the outer envelope, which is the mailing envelope, which for this particular, for the primary, and I'm assuming, I'm not sure for November, I'm assuming for November, postage will be paid. But we also will have another option this time around. We have drop boxes in all municipalities. If you put your return address, it's a good idea. It helps the town clerk, helps make the process go faster when they're going through envelopes. And you can put your return ballot, like I said, into the mailbox, which is postage paid, or also the official drop boxes that are located near city and town halls. There has been some questions about the security of these boxes. They are extremely secure. They're the same kinds of boxes that have been used throughout the country by states that do total mail-in voting. So they're more secure, and a lot. The opening is very, very small. It can only fit an envelope. Nothing else can be put in there. The boxes are outside municipalities, as I mentioned. They're only opened by the town clerks, are the only ones who are allowed to open them. And I do know that to keep the tampering issue down, not that they can be tampered with, they can't, but there are locations in some of the cities near police stations. So that's another level of security for those boxes. Let's see what else. And the one thing that's great about the box, if you have any concern about the mail or you've waited too long to put your application in, dropping at the box is quick, it's easy, it's not, you don't have to wait for the mail. If you have any concern about the mail, the drop box is the perfect option. And this is this is a absentee moderator handbook. And these are some of the things that will keep your ballot from being counted. These are some of the things. You're missing the timestamp from the town clerk. The outer envelope. The inner envelope has a different name than the outer envelope. That gets rejected. The inner envelope has multiple envelopes in it. Another thing people do, they say, you know, I have a couple, my wife and I, my kids, we're all in the same household. Why don't I just take all of our inner envelopes and shove them in one envelope? Don't do that. None of them will get counted. Each voter has to have an inner envelope and an outer envelope. That's just how it works. And that's another way we try to keep it secure. Like I said, if you don't sign that inner envelope, again, it goes into the reject pile. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, which is why we're going through this to follow the instructions very carefully. And that's the other thing. People think that we all have to vote absentee. We definitely do not. I'm working the polls. A lot of people already know we're working the polls, and the polls are going to be incredibly safe. Denise Merrill's office put out a lot of guidelines for municipalities to keep voters safe as well as poll workers safe. There'll be plexiglass, there'll be gloves, there'll be PPE, there will be hand sanitizer. Everybody gets their own pen. There won't be any sharing of pens. So there's going to be social distancing, and we'll have people in the polls to make sure all of these things happen. So that's another thing people need to understand. You can definitely go to the polls. They're open 6 to 8 p.m., 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. as they are every year and every time. My only concern would be there may be some consolidation of polling places. So if you are concerned about that, just call your town clerk or your registrars to make sure that your polling place is one of them that will be open. I'm pretty sure most of them will be open. So now we have some questions that have come in beforehand that I'm going to go over. One of the first questions I've had from Sarah in Greater Hartford was, how can the leagues and others help assist the registrars and the town clerks? Probably the best way to help them right now is to to be a poll worker. Poll workers are needed all over the state, in every town and every city, just because most poll workers traditionally have retirees who are older, who are a vulnerable population. So if you feel safe and you feel secure, or you know, a college kid or a high school kid who's not busy on the 11th or on November 3rd, certainly they're going to be looking for poll workers and other helpers. I would contact your town clerk or your registrar directly to see what kind of help they need. I'm sure they would greatly appreciate it. The criteria is the same. Now we know the legislature did vote to extend this to November, so we'll be doing the same criteria that we use now for the primary will also be what we'll be doing in November. And hopefully the primary will go off fairly easily, But luckily, we'll be able to correct some problems between now and November, should there be any hiccups. I think we'll be fine. Primaries are usually very small. It's a closed primary system in Connecticut. You have to be a registered Republican or a registered Democrat to participate. And there is still time, if you're not registered or not affiliated and you haven't been, and you're an unaffiliated voter for at least 3 months, you can still register to vote and you still can affiliate up until August 6th online. And you can still, if you're a new voter, August 10th before noon. So that's something that everybody should understand. There has been some concern about the mail backlog. That is a concern. I don't think it's a great concern. And again, we have the drop boxes just to keep that from being an issue. If you have any question, like I said, if you have any time constraints or whatever, and it's a lot easier to drop and run that ballot into that drop box than to wait for the mail if you don't have to. The safety of the ballot drop boxes is another question. I hope I covered that one. They are secure, they're safe, and they're like I said, the town clerk is the only one who opens them. So that's something that you should understand. They're very, very secure. We don't get a receipt for absentee ballots. Well, you don't get a receipt when you vote in person at the polls either. You get to see that little number change on the tabulator, but there's really no receipt. So I trust the system. You should trust the system. I think we're in pretty good shape in Connecticut. As I said, we don't nearly have as many troubles as other states, which is a good thing. And we want to do better. We can always do better, but I think we're in pretty good shape for that. That's all the questions I have from before.
Okay. I do have something for you, Laura.
Okay.
And I will go. The first question is, should we have received our absentee ballots for the primary?
Yes, and maybe not. They just started sending them out, I think on the 21st or the 22nd. So I would not panic yet. They can be sent out pretty quickly once they get them. I would, because I know there is a little bit of buildup in some places of applications, but I would not start to panic. Depending on how, I would give them another week, or not another week, but like another 5 days. If you don't see it, then you can always call your town clerk and ask, are you sending them? Have you sent me mine? And they'll know whether or not they've sent it out to you.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can I give my completed and signed absentee ballot to someone else to drop in a ballot box if I don't want to mail it, or do I have to do it myself?
No, because that's one of the beauties of our system, because you have the inner envelope security and the outer envelope security. Yes, you can give your ballot if you trust that person to drop it in the drop box for you. Yes, absolutely.
We had another question, which I think you addressed, but you might want to add something to it about, can we choose to go in and vote instead of using absentee, even though you may have received an absentee ballot?
Yes, if you received an absentee ballot and you haven't returned it, then yes, you can go vote in person, because if they receive your absentee ballot, that's when your name on the checklist will receive the red letter A, meaning they received your absentee ballot. If you fill out that absentee ballot and mail it back, they're going to assume that you voted by absentee. And that's where you'll just say, okay, I voted by absentee, and let it go. If you want to retract an absentee ballot that hasn't been received, like say you decided, I want to go vote in person, but I already mailed my absentee ballot, I have concern that they have not received it. If you go to the polls and there's an A next to your name, that means they received it. And you're going to say, you got to go home, unless it's before 10 o'clock. And if you really want to vote in person, then you can go back to the town clerk, who will give you a signed form, retract your ballot, and then go vote in person. But usually if you have an A next to your name, that means your ballot's been received and we've considered that you voted absentee. You can't do both. It's one or the other.
Okay. The next question, is there enough staff in each city to count the ballots? And do they need people to help and also at the polls?
Yes, and probably yes. The Secretary of State and the federal government have given has offered municipalities extra funds to hire additional people. I'm hoping and assuming most of them have taken advantage of that and hired additional people to help with the volume. But again, it's important, if you want to help out, give your registrar or your town clerk a call. I'm sure they are still looking. They may be looking for poll workers for August 11th. They may not be, but it's always a good idea to call. And certainly for November, it's plenty of time to help them. They would appreciate that help. One other thing I want to mention before the next question is, when you, people have asked, well, how do you know if someone's voted absentee and they go to the polls and they voted again, all this kind of thing. When you vote by absentee, like I said, you get that letter A in front of your name. When you vote at the polls, your name is crossed off the checklist with a pen. So you can't have an A next to your name and be crossed off at the polls. That doesn't happen. Any other questions?
There's another question, I guess, the concern about having someone else return your absentee ballot. And I guess if you, as you said, you know, as long as you're giving it to someone you trust, you know, that's fine. We wouldn't recommend that you just give it to anyone.
No, if someone, and definitely don't do any kind of, if someone asks, oh, can I mail it for you? I'll save you a trip. If there's somebody you don't know, don't do it. But again, the security issue is, if someone took, let's just hypothetically, someone took your ballot, they opened it, they revoted, they put it back together. Well, I think the town clerks are going to kind of give a heads up, but there's a lot of tape all over something, or something looks ripped. So it's definitely, you can give it to someone that you trust.
Okay, there's been kind of a conversation about concern about the absentee ballots being able, towns and particularly cities who have a lot of absentee ballots coming in. This person seems to be more concerned about November and whether, the absentee ballots can be prepped to go ahead and be counted on election day. I believe there was something in the legislation about that. Laura, can you talk about that?
Ballots are always counted on election day. We don't have early voting. We don't have, so that's why they're only counted on election day. After 10 o'clock, they can start counting them. There's a lot of work that goes on so that when they do start counting them, they're literally ready to go. It's set up that way because that happens. The additional volume will be a question. I think everybody's preparing for it for months now, anticipating that it will be an issue since the beginning of the pandemic, certainly. So they have hired additional people so that everything is ready to go at 10 o'clock on election day. Results might take a little longer than they usually do, but that's a whole different subject. But as far as the counting of them, I'm pretty sure most cities and towns are ready for it. They understand the responsibility they have, and they're taking it seriously, and hopefully hiring enough people to cover that.
Okay. Here's another question. Can you drop your absentee ballot in the box on election day?
Yes, you can. Absentee ballots can be received up until like 6 o'clock, I believe, on election day. You want to make sure it's as early as possible, just because they do come in during the day, all day. And when they do come in, the moderators are called at the polling places. Hey, did this person vote in person already? And if they haven't checked off, that absentee ballot's rejected, as I mentioned. So it's best to try to not get to that point if you can, just so you don't miss the window. I'm sure they'll be emptying those boxes on election day as late as possible. But I would not, it should be counted on election day, but I wouldn't wait if you can. If at all possible, better early than not at this particular point. Just because a lot of it, let's face it, we don't know. This is new for us. This volume level of absentee ballots is new for Connecticut and new for a lot of people in a lot of states. So I think it's really best if you have if there's any way you turn it around as fast as you can, I would suggest that you do that.
Okay, sort of back to the previous discussion. What the question is will registrars be able to validate and prepare the absentee ballots before election day and before they start counting them?
Yes, they all do. Like I said, the absentee ballots come in like, you know, waves, right? People get their application at a different time, they mail it back at a different time. So up until the primary day and the day before the primary, they're getting them and preparing them all along. And they batch them with rubber bands, they batch them, you know, they put them together. Once they check and they make sure that they are the same person from the application, right? They match them to the application, make sure that they're legitimate. They go into these piles, and it's pretty interesting the way they organize them so that the minute they can go, they go. So there's a lot of preparation that's done way before election day, primary day, that they can get that stuff ready to go. So they're ready to roll the minute they can start.
Okay, the next question is rather lengthy, but I think that we can address parts of it maybe after this because it's a kind of detailed, but it seems that the concern of that question is that absentee ballots, will they be processed according to legal standards? And I think you just said that they are, but also will there be any attempt to contact voters whose ballots were invalidated to determine their intent or get their written verification of intent?
All the ballots, once the ballots are opened, the inner envelopes are open and they're sorted, what they do is they make sure the ballots are checked to make sure that all those things, the honor envelope, everything is done, and that there are some, if they don't go through the machine while they're putting them in, they will try to do voter intent, and they will try to put them through while they do check them to make sure, why did this one get rejected? Let's make sure, let's see if we can make it happen. They always try to, everybody who handles any kind of ballots, they're always trying to make, what was the voter intention? Keeping that voter enfranchised and making sure their vote count is their number one job. They will be able to count it. If at all possible, they will try to count it. So
Okay.
the answer is yes.
So there are some questions about the counting start time on election day.
Mm-hmm.
Someone wants to know, is it 10 a.m. or 10 p.m.? And another person wants to know why they can't start counting them at 5 a.m. in the morning. So,
well, the 10 a.m. rule is so that people, if they want to, can retract the ballot. That's pretty much why I believe the 10 a.m. rule is there. So if people say, you know what, I voted absentee, I thought I was going to be out of town, but I'm not, I really want to go vote in person. So it gives them time to get to their town clerk to retract their ballot so they can vote in person. And nothing is counted after, I mean, once the 8 p.m. mark comes, if the ballot's not there may be some changes this time around, but they don't count ballots. I mean, they'll count ballots if they have them. I don't know what the protocol will be for that. I really don't know what the protocol will be for that right now. But right now, if it's 8 p.m., the ballots stop getting counted. All ballots stop getting counted at 8 p.m.
Okay. This next question comes in and it says, can a parent cast a ballot and sign the inner envelope for a college student who's away at school?
No. No. That voter is old enough to vote. They should be old enough to do their own thing and do their own ballot and sign their own ballot.
Okay. And it looks like that's all the questions I have in here. Let me just do a quick check of the emailed questions, and it looks like the people who emailed their questions are with us and got to ask their question through Facebook. So I think I'm done with questions for you, Laura.
Okay, I'm glad. That was good. I think, you know, here's the thing. We have to realize that this is it's a new world for all of us, and we're all trying to adjust. And the good news is that we'll get through it, and luckily we'll have the primary will show us where we need to improve. So hopefully everybody gets out and vote. We want to make sure everybody who can vote votes. Please vote. Please vote. And it's all about turnout, right? A lot of people did not do anything last time around. 46.9% of people who were eligible to vote did not vote last time. So we need to remember that. It's all about turnout. Turnout, turnout, turnout. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. And if there's any, just to let people know, if we see any other questions that did not get answered, please mail them to voterservices@lwvct.org, and we'll respond to your email. Thanks, everyone.